Are we ready to go? We're streaming live. It says in progress online. So with that, we will call to order this work session of the West Lynn City Council. It is Monday, March 3rd, 2025. Councilor Groner is joining us virtually. Thank you. And Councilor Breik is excused for her vacation. So she'll be back. With that, we'll take a motion to approve the agenda if everybody's cool with the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda for the March 3rd, 2025 council meeting, work session. Looks like, Lou, did you have a question?
No, I'm just seconding.
Oh,
Okay.
thank you.
Lou, okay, Councilor Groner seconded the motion. So the motion is to approve the agenda. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, call the roll, please.
Councillor Bonington,
Yes.
Council President Baumgartner,
Yes.
Councillor Gruner,
Yes,
Mayor Bielostowski.
Yes. So the agenda is approved, and we'll go to public comments. Any comments today?
There are none.
No public comments today. Okay. Well, then moving right along to mayor and council reports. I wanted to open the floor up to the council for reports from community advisory groups or city business, et cetera, then all. So Council President, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a report from the Willamette Falls Locks Authority meeting last week. And the Locks Authority is moving forward toward requesting the remaining financial support that is needed to reopen the locks at the state level. And next week, I will be accompanying Reed Wagner, the executive director of the Locks Authority, as he does some meetings for the National Waterways Association Conference in Washington, D.C., as I will be there with several council members for the National League of Cities Conference. And that is all I have.
Thank you. Councilor Bonington, anything to report?
I've got nothing.
Councilor Groner?
yes, I too will be going to Washington next week for the League of Cities meeting.
Couldn't hear you very well.
He said he'll be going to DC for the conference. And I will be there as well. Looking forward to it. My reports, let's see, several of us attended a tour of Historic City Hall. And that was awesome to see. It's coming to almost to the end of the project and looks so good in there. So we're looking forward to the coalition moving in and the city being able to use some of the meeting space. And then the other thing, I attended last week, a call of the Metropolitan Mayors Consortium with several of the mayors from around the region, including the mayor of Portland. There was a discussion about housing and homelessness and the Metro Supportive Housing Services status that we've talked about here with Councilor Christine Lewis, and lots of conversations going on about that issue regionally. And also the legislative session, we received an update from the Metropolitan Mayors Consortium's lobbyist and approved the legislative agenda. So there's kind of several groups. You got League of Oregon Cities, and then you've got the Metropolitan Mayors Consortium, which is a group that of all the mayors, and we have our own group that advocates. So anyway, there's my update. Anything else, Mayor? Councilor Groner, you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, I attended the science fair at the Riverside High School last week. It was very enlightening, really a lot of exciting projects by middle school and high school students from the West Lynn Wilsonville School District.
Cool. Were you a judge there?
Yes, I was a judge
Cool.
in the physics group.
Thank you for doing that. Serving your community in many ways, Councilor Groner.
Thank you.
Well, with that, we can move on. I had on the agenda item 4B, which is update from mayor on ODOT Jurisdictional Transfer Advisory Committee. And I was going to see if we could pull up the email that I sent to council earlier with just a little information. This is just an introduction to this topic. I know the city manager sent out some information, and I just wanted to put it on council's radar, this particular advisory committee and process. And let's see, we're pulling up. Okay, yes, it's fine to start. And city manager could chime in later if he has any follow-up thoughts. But so ODOT has this committee called the Jurisdictional Transfer Advisory Committee, and it's actually, I think, established by the state legislature in that House bill reference there. And this is a screenshot of their introductory page. But I wanted to bring it to council because we've talked about it with regard to Highway 43, and I wanted to show you all the City of Tigard's final application from this committee's report, with the idea that maybe the city could do something similar with Highway 43 eventually. But this is kind of the process whereby the city and ODOT could come together to discuss and reach agreement on the state of needed repairs and how much money is needed to bring the highway up to par. And then it goes to this committee to be recommended to the legislature for funding to bring the road up to par. So this is kind of the introductory page and just the steps to do it, to jurisdictional transfer. Councilor Groner, could you mute your mic if you don't mind? Just getting a little feedback from you. Sorry. This committee takes applications and every even numbered year considers and makes recommendations to the legislature for funding. And last year was their first actual year of going through the process, and they got one from Tiger and River. And so I just want to read from this page. The first step in the transfer is for the city to engage in conversation with their ODOT district and region. A city or county may wish to transfer ownership of a highway from ODOT to themselves for a variety of reasons. And then, let's see, cities and counties may apply with the support and assistance of ODOT staff to the Jurisdictional Advisory Committee to be considered for recommendation to the legislature for financial support of the transfer. And then no later than the 15th of each even numbered year, the committee submits a report, and that's where the recommendations come in. So could we pull up the report really quick? I just wanted to show one thing. I sent that over. This was the report from last year. Right there, you got it. And then if we could scroll down a little bit to this, keep going. Right there, the page above that with the. So this was from the City of Tigard's application, and there's several financial figures in here, but I just wanted to highlight that kind of this is the process by which cities come to an agreement on what the cost is for a state of good, to bring the road up to the state of good repair, and then how that's all negotiated with the legislature. So if you scroll down a little bit, right there, sorry, up there, the city is required to put a 20%, the local government's required to put a 20% match for whatever funding you're requesting to bring the road up to the state of good repair. And so, but in this case, one thing that was interesting was with Tigard, they were able to use, in lieu of a cash contribution, they could provide maintenance credits over the 20-year horizon. So they're not actually putting up any cash to at the outset to accomplish the transfer. But in section 5 there, you have $50 million. And that is the amount that this committee recommended to the legislature unanimously for funding. So right there on the page, you see the committee unanimously recommends this transfer and funding in the amount of $50 million to the Joint Committee on Transportation. The Oregon Department of Transportation provided a letter of support for the City of Tigard's application for the transfer of Oregon Highway 141 and related requests for $30 million in funds towards the state of good repair for Hall Boulevard, contingent on the transfer being approved by the Oregon Transportation Commission. So the point of me bringing this up is to kind of introduce this idea in a quick manner with everybody, just because I'm interested in exploring whether this is something the city's interested in doing for Highway 43. And it was on our council goals to look at it. And course, there's a transportation package going on right now. It's unclear whether the legislature will actually fund, for example, the City of Tigard's project, but it's something to be watching and monitoring, because we could potentially move forward with this for our own highway and start the conversations with ODOT and our staff. And we all talk about getting funding for Highway 43, and this is possibly one of the better ways to do that for a major amount of money, cash infusion. So any questions? I guess I'll stop there and stop rambling on for the council. Council President.
Thank you, Mayor. This is very interesting. Thank you for bringing this information forward. I'm extremely engaged about this jurisdictional transfer specifically because on the very least, we could maybe have some more control over improvements and the cost of them, which I'm understanding every time I've heard is that it costs quite a bit more for ODOT to complete these repairs. And not that the city has a lot of extra money laying around. Of course, I'm not suggesting that, but just the better efficient use of tax dollars where we're finding funding and it's not going through the ODOT process, which costs 4 times as much to do the same exact repair. So thank you for all of that.
You're welcome. Yeah, I mean, we're doing a project on Merrillhurst Drive right now that involves Highway 43, doing intersection improvements, and the cost has ballooned for that. And so, I don't know, long term, it feels like we're talking a lot about Highway 43 and what we want it to look like, and bike lanes and crosswalks and making it safer. And it feels like that going through the ODOT process for that would be very difficult and more expensive. But obviously, there's city concerns about funding and a long-term maintenance, how to handle that, because it's a road with a lot of travelers on it. So this is something to just consider. And City Manager, you've sent out an update with this committee, and I just wanted to bring a little more information to the City Council. So this was a haphazard presentation, but just sharing some initial thoughts on this so we could look at this further. Anything to add or?
Thank you, Mayor. The key thing that I would add is when we had some conversations about this a few years ago, maybe even before the pandemic, and ODOT said, sure, you can have the highway if you just take it basically in its current condition. And I think what you see here is the conversation really evolving. This scale of repair is quite a bit more than the simple overlays that they were talking about doing on Highway 43 at the time. So I think if tens of millions of dollars are potentially in play in the legislature for these, then it's a much more significant conversation than it used to be.
Thanks. Agreed. So, and we've got good relationships with folks in legislature, so something to consider and keep talking about. So we will move on from this for now, but I just wanted to bring the topic to City Council. Unless there's any other questions from anybody, comments, just information item from the mayor. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for listening and letting me share some information with you. We will move on to proclamations, and the first one is Women's History Month, to be read by Council President Baumgartner.
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas American women of every race, class, and ethnic background have made historic contributions to the growth and strength of our nation in countless recorded and unrecorded ways, and whereas American women have played and continue to play critical economic, cultural, and social roles in every sphere of life by constituting a significant portion of the labor force working inside and outside of the home, within corporations, the military, federal and local government agencies, and educational organizations. And whereas American women have played a unique role throughout history by providing the majority of the volunteer labor force, and were particularly important in the establishment of early charitable, philanthropic, and cultural institutions. And whereas American women of every race, class, and ethnic background served as early leaders in the forefront of every major progressive social change movement. And whereas American women have been leaders not only in securing their own rights of suffrage and equal opportunity, but also in the abolitionist movement, the emancipation movement the industrial labor movement, the civil rights movement, and other movements, especially the peace movement, which create a more fair and just society for all. And whereas despite these contributions, the role of American women in history has been consistently overlooked and undervalued in the teaching and study of American history. And whereas the City of West Lynn is proud to honor the stories, histories, and contributions of women in our community and throughout our state and our nation, and proud to put forth the goal of gender equity and work to ensure representation and opportunity for all its women and girls. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the City Council of the City of West Lynn that March 2025 is Women's History Month, dated this third day of March 2025. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President. And I will now read the other proclamation, which is for National Drug and Alcohol Fact Week. Whereas National Drug and Alcohol Fact Week is sponsored by the National Institute on Drug Abuse and the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism to encourage teens to ask questions about drugs, drug abuse, alcohol, and alcoholism and receive scientifically based facts and answers in return. And whereas it is an annual week-long health observance that provides high school students across the United States with the opportunity to ask questions and get answers from the nation's leading experts in the field of substance use, misuse, dependence, and disorders via a web chat. And whereas it is a celebration of the inquisitive minds of teens and encourages them to ask questions about substances and drug use, misuse, and alcohol and alcoholism, and get scientifically based answers without judgment or biased comments. And whereas it celebrates the efforts of national and community organizations working with teens to encourage science-based conversations about drugs misuse and abuse, and alcohol and alcoholism. Whereas National Drug and Alcohol Fact Week attempts to inform teens about the impact and risk of substance abuse, and now therefore be it proclaimed by the City Council of the City of West Lynn that March 17th through 23rd is National Drug and Alcohol Facts Week in the City of West Lynn, and we urge all community members to participate in the activities planned dated this third day of March 2025. And traditionally, this proclamation has been presented to with Pam Pierce at the meeting of the Teen Advisory Board. And I have not seen communications about a date for that meeting, but I'm pretty sure that will come pretty soon. Are you aware of any of, okay. Maybe we can reach out to Pam and see if that's something that she'd like to do, because this has been a part of their proceedings at the high school. So we'll do that. Thank you, everybody. So it is proclaimed for those two proclamations. Next, if we are ready, moving right along to the Stormwater Management Manual discussion, agenda item 6. Mr. Williams, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You guys both coming up? All right, so we have Clark Ide and Jameson Lumpkin from our engineering department to provide an initial presentation to council about potential changes to the structure, format, and adoption of our stormwater management program. And there is a lengthy document in the council packet, which I'm sure you've all fully reviewed. And what we've asked is for Clark and Jameson to present us with information about why the need for a change and what the proposed now I'm distracted. and what the proposed manual would accomplish. So, Clark, could you please take it away and start off the discussion?
Sure. Good afternoon, Council, Mayor. So I'm sorry, I'm distracted too. So as John has mentioned, we are here to talk about Stormwater Management Manual. Give a little brief overview, background of kind of how we currently operate and the changes we're looking to make and the reasons why. And talk a little bit about implications of those changes for the community, mainly the developers, and answer any questions you may have. As Mr. Williams said, I'm sure you all have read the draft manual that we sent. It was only 200 pages, which is significantly less than the one we're using currently. So step one, we're downsizing the manual a little bit. So is, for the city, we have a permit with the Department of Environmental Quality with DEQ that requires us to implement certain stormwater enforcement to reduce pollutants that are going to travel into our state waterways. Under this permit, we have to implement certain post-construction stormwater BMPs, so best management practices. These will specifically address reducing pollutants and detaining water on site. Currently, to do this, we have used the city of Portland's stormwater manual, which we reference in all of our design standards under Public Works. This works fine. It's not ideal because the city of Portland is much different than we are on several levels. Because it's a little different, we actually hired a consultant to review our permitting process and how we implement our best management practices. They now to do a gap analysis where we're not meeting fully DEQ's requirements or where we have some places where we can improve. During this process, they came up with some ideas to address the gaps that we have. One of their thoughts to do it holistically was to develop our own manual, which we thought was a good idea. And so we embarked on starting that process. Some of the reasons, and we mentioned this in here, the differences between us and the city of Portland. We have a lot of different terrain that they don't have. Our infrastructure is different. They have a lot of combined sewers that we don't have. Our soil types are different. So using their manual is not like a best fit for us. So this is where we came up with the idea of starting our own manual. I think we have a little bit of a presentation to kind of walk through.
We have a few slides we can go through. Kind of touch on a lot of what Clark just mentioned.
That's a tugboat.
Will not be presenting on Lady B.
Yeah, that was better.
Okay. Now, there we go. All right, so like Clark mentioned, the city does have a permit with DEQ, and it's part of the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, NPDES. It's also related to the Municipal Separated Storm Sewer Systems, MS4. So you hear those acronyms thrown out a lot, and that image there is just a screenshot of the cover page of our permit, kind of just showing you guys that this is the permit itself, and we're also in this with a lot of other local jurisdictions. So that permit essentially allows the city to discharge our storm system into state waters, which in our case would be the Tualatin and the Willamette. But we have to meet certain pollution reduction requirements in order to do that. So this is what this permit talks about. So the reasoning behind the manual, like Clark mentioned, we worked with Brown and Caldwell as our consultant, and they did a gap analysis of our current public works design standards. There was a lot of gaps, specifically with post-construction management standards. And what that kind of covers is stormwater facilities. So stormwater ponds, anytime someone develops or redevelops impervious area that's 1,000 square feet or more, they have to have some sort of post-construction facility. Just a couple examples there. One of them is the image from Cedar Oak. We did some roadside planters, and the other kind of design image there, that is actually from a subdivision just down the road on Bland. So these are all in play right now. We always do these facilities, but we decided it's time to have our own manual rather than referencing Portland's. So this is kind of just stating that currently our design standards reference Portland's. We do modify them there's certain retention requirements and stuff like that that it's specific to the city that we do call out in our public works design standards. And then some changes that'll be happening with this manual. Clear submittal requirements. So right now, between our requirements and the submittals that are required with Portland, there can be a lot of disconnect in what we require versus what they require. This manual clearly states, I don't know if you guys look through much of the manual, but it section 2 clearly states all the required submittals. It may be slightly more robust than our current practice, but I think that's necessary because it'll make each facility design more consistent, and it will actually help us internally with our review because we know exactly what to look at and it's explicit. So
It also should save some time on review. If this is a clear requirement up front, all of this stuff should come in with the initial review, less back and forth with us sending comments. So hopefully it streamlines the review process for stormwater a little bit as well.
yeah. Modifications as city deems necessary. So if it's our own manual, we can modify it as problems arise. Right now, Portland just updated their entire manual just this year. So city staff now needs to go through and learn an entire new manual and know all the changes. And we didn't have a say in what those changes were. So it becomes an issue. Luckily, I think last time they modified was 2020, so we've had some time to know the old manual, but now we have to learn all these new ones. So it's better just to have our own and modify as we deem fit. More applicable to city needs. So I included that screenshot of the map of Portland just to show what Clark talked about. A lot of their city doesn't have a separated sewer or storm sewer system. So our permit requirements of DEQ are different than Portland's. It's just different cities, different infrastructure. So again, we can tailor it better to Westland needs. It'll be clearly meeting requirements of DEQ. Of course, with the permit, city has our specific requirements that we have to meet. This will be just explicit language stating that we're meeting these requirements. Yeah. And then I think the last one I have is just to note, so language on source control. Source control is like high pollution areas. I just took a screenshot off maps of the Chevron down on 8th and 10th. This would be a kind of an example. Just a lot of, petroleum products, gas, obviously, it's just a high pollution zone. So we have some language talking specifically of how to treat those commercial businesses, and it's common practice how they do it now anyways, but we've never had explicit language in our standards stating what to do. So just another thing to add in. And I believe that's it for the slide. So kind of just a quick overview of what changes are coming with this. But yeah, and then if you guys have any questions, I think we'd be happy to answer.
So just to add a little bit to what Jameson said, as far as actual facilities for stormwater that we're talking about, they wouldn't change. We're not adding anything drastically different than what we're currently doing. The major component of the change is going to be our submittal process. So developers, contractors shouldn't be caught off guard like we're imposing some new standards on what we're gonna require for types of facilities. They're all very much the same. I think in some instances we've probably made it a little easier for the design process to go through. There may be there'll be some minor hiccups for folks going through it the first time, I'm sure, because we are going to be more reliant on soil infiltration rates, because what we want to see is if you're going to develop something new, we want to see it contained and preferably infiltrated on site to then not add any kind of overflow to our city system. So we've implemented some changes in kind of tiered infiltration rates of kind of how the sizing would work. It would be different than Portland, but it's not dissimilar to other jurisdictions that are going through the same process right now. And that is something else to add. We are not the only ones who are doing this currently. Gresham just finished theirs.
Yeah, they just redid theirs. There's a few other jurisdictions, I believe Salem's in the process of updating theirs. And a few others, I don't know by name, but there's a lot. Brown and Caldwell, our consultant, they do a lot of work with other jurisdictions. So they're kind of saying a lot of people are in the same boat that we are right now.
Thank you, guys. Great presentation. And I think Council President has a question.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, thank you for the information. I'm just kind of curious, how long has this been an issue? And I mean, why now? Just curiosity.
So with the DEQ permit, essentially every year on December 1st, there's kind of this permit lasts from, I think it's 2021 to 2026. And every year there's kind of more and more requirements that we have to do. And so we did the gap analysis with Brown and Caldwell because we wanted to look specifically at that post-construction management, which was due back December 1st of 2024. We've had meetings with DEQ and we're fine where we're at right now since we're making strides to get in compliance. But that was one of the focuses with that just the last year. So that's kind of what kicked this all off.
Thank you. And I'm just also curious, what is the processing time for, you said that it'll probably improve the processing time. I just was wondering like how we compare to other cities.
Well, from a site development standpoint, it obviously always depends on the scope, right? So if we were trying to do something simple, like just like a new one house lot, our review time is typically a week to get initial comments or a week and a half. I mean, we try to stay in that timeline. It's obviously depending on what we have going on in the office. And then total turnaround time, we try to do it within 6 weeks. We do this in conjunction with the building department and planning so that we're all doing reviews simultaneously. So a lot of times our part of the review is done before they've had a chance to do their part of review. So it's hard to say exactly how long it takes us, but internally we try to get between 2 and 4 weeks to get them turned around as quickly as possible.
Have you had people complaining about it?
Yes.
Okay.
Um,
All right. I don't have any experience in this area. So I was just curious how we compare to other cities or.
Comparatively, we are pretty good about turnaround time.
Okay.
We do know there are other jurisdictions that take much longer and are upfront about that. We try to turn things around as quickly as we can.
Yes. Thank you.
Councilor Bonington.
So this might surprise you, but I actually did read the entire old one last year when it rained really hard one day. I believe it was the beginning of summer, and there was that weird foamy runoff that people were talking about. So I had seen some discussion about whether we had those combined sewer systems, and I went in there to try and find that. And it was not entirely clear, but I was wondering if this updated manual will address any of those instances where we have crossover between those two systems.
We do not have crossover. So that's the difference. Portland does, but our permit, yeah, the MS4 stands for Municipal Separated Storm Sewer. So that's why we have this permit is because all of our storm goes directly into the river. There's no crossover with sanitary.
So that's what I had thought I understood from it, but I also remember seeing that there was the potential for like a very small amount of that.
Yeah, well, there's always going to be, damage in the pipe can lead to infiltration in underground. That's in every system that has any sort of age on it. And then there can be potential for, I guess, some runoff, even through the manhole covers or something, but very minimal.
It would have to be one of our heaviest storms for any of that to happen, and Jameson is correct. There is some infiltration that is from the sanitary sewer that happens as it ages. And that's also, part of our maintenance work is that we go through and try to do capital projects to address infiltration in these pipes and reline them to reduce that. But again, that's during the heaviest storms that we ever get. And they're very rare that it happens.
That's good to hear because there was a lot of confusion about whether that that crossover was occurring or possible, and I didn't think it was,
No,
but it's
yeah.
good to be able to
And-
conclusively say
And
that.
just for clarification, when we talk about Portland's, like they do have combined storm and sanitary sewer lines throughout the city. They all go to a treatment plant, but there are areas where they are, large areas of the inner city where they're all running together as one. And when we have those big storm events like we're talking about, they do have issues because the treatment plant can't handle all that at the same time.
Thank you.
Good questions, everybody. The only question I have is, are there any, from my understanding, this is kind of just getting our own manual and there's not a lot of big changes to our policy. Like, is that your position that there's like not things in here that after some folks start applying for developments permits, they might come in, there'd be a huge change that increases costs or anything like that? Or,
There shouldn't be
Okay.
any major changes from how we've been operating in the past. Like I
Okay.
said, the manual, in my opinion, Jameson has worked very hard on this. It's easier to understand. So it should be easier for design professionals to understand, developers to understand what's required. Like I said, hopefully that does some streamlining and efficiency. But as far as like the actual practicality of what they need to do, it doesn't change. It doesn't really change much at all for facility design.
understood. Well, thank you. Good. Counselor Groner, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, it is my understanding that all of these rules apply after construction. That's the state. Are there any rules that prevent runoff during construction?
So, Council Groner, that would fall under our erosion and sediment control plan. So during construction, they have implements in place to keep everything on site. There isn't necessarily any kind of detention per se during the construction process, other than temporary, what would you say, sediment fence and
Yeah,
stuff like that.
erosion control devices, I guess, but all that during construction, that's all laid out in our Public Works design standards right now. And it's going to remain there. So we still have all the requirements and standards for during construction, their erosion control. There were no gaps were identified in that specific section. So we decided just to leave it alone and leave that in our Public Works design standards.
Thank you. That clarifies matters.
And so just for next steps for everybody, obviously we've sent you a draft of the new stormwater management manual. We will be posting the new manual online for public comment. So we're going to give everyone a chance to take a look at what we're proposing, and take any feedback that they may provide. Like I said, we are anticipating that we won't get a lot of questions or comments because fundamentally not a lot has changed. But we are going to put that out for the public so that we can at least have some feedback if it's warranted.
Okay, and then it looks like the March 17th is the special meeting date where this will be presented in an ordinance. And I guess the question for the council is consensus on moving this towards that.
Yeah,
ordinance.
Mayor and councilors, if I may, I
Go
thought
ahead.
I might add a little bit more about the procedural aspects of this project. So I worked closely with Clark and Jameson to talk about the ordinance that I drafted that would give express authority for this particular new manual and to enforce it. And so that's attached in your agenda bill. I noticed that some other jurisdictions do actually have express authority in their code called out for stormwater management, and we didn't have that provision. And so I looked at like Oswego and Gresham and a few others as examples, and that's why I proposed this draft ordinance here. I just go over some of the high-level parts. It's pretty short and straightforward, but basically it gives express authority to adopt and enforce the manual. And that's about establishing standards and guidelines for managing stormwater runoff to reduce pollutants from development, as you heard from Clark and Jameson. And it delegates the authority to the city engineer to revise and update the manual as necessary based on 3 circumstances. Those are the most current federal and state stormwater or water quality requirements, improvements in current industry practices, or changes in best management practices. And any of those revisions or updates would be required to be posted 30 days in advance of their effectiveness to make sure there's adequate time for the public to review. And the city engineer and the city's code enforcement officer are delegated authority to enforce the provisions in the manual. So that's the gist of the ordinance. Our plan is to bring this back to you on March 17th, like you mentioned, at the special meeting and adopt this ordinance. And in the meantime, the whole long manual that Clark referenced would be posted and available for them to seek feedback on. And this is the little change in the agenda bill. We're actually going to give that time for public comment, and we wouldn't come back with you until the April business meeting, which I believe is April 14th, to adopt that stormwater management manual through a resolution. So that's the slight change in the timeline from the original agenda bill.
Thank you. It makes sense to me. So I see head nods, and so there's a consensus there. So we will adopt the ordinance in March 17th, and then the stormwater manual will come back in April for adoption following public comment. Is that correct?
That's correct,
Okay.
yes.
Makes sense. And I like sending that out to the community just in case they have any comments. So anything else on this topic from the council? Well, I would just thank everybody for their work on this. It's one of the important issues that we deal with, just to make sure that our stormwater is contained and no problems happen. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One of those behind the scenes things that the city does. So, well, we will look forward to that on the March 17th. So, moving on, we have folks, I see Jim Edwards out there and some folks from the Advocates. So we'll move to agenda item 7, which is the Lady B tugboat discussion. City Manager, do you have any introductory comments?
Mr. Mayor, not much beyond what was in the packet. We have finally found an agenda that had a little bit of time for the advocates to come and speak with council. It's been since last year, quite some time since council last discussed this. And last time you talked to the advocates about the Lady B, you had some questions about hazardous materials and storage time and storage location and maintenance costs and fundraising. And these folks have been working pretty hard to answer those questions, and they are back in front of you to tell us what they have learned. In the staff report, I just linked to last year's staff report rather than write everything again. I thought the topics on our mind as staff and the topics on your mind as council kind of the same, and all of the background information. But we'll welcome Jim Edwards up here to start things off. Thanks for being here, Jim.
Thank you. Do I need to identify myself?
Go ahead, just state your name and city residence just for the minutes. And
Okay. I'm Jim Edwards. My address is 19890 Bellevue Way in West Lynn. I'm a board member of the Advocates for Willamette Falls Heritage, a nonprofit heritage advocacy organization that has been active in West Lynn for over 25 years. I'm here again on behalf of the advocates to ask the city to take ownership and provide a location to display the Lady B. And I'll go into more details about the Lady B. She's a small tugboat. She is the last remaining 77-year-old tugboat built and operated by the Bernert family.
Did you want your slides up? Did you want the slide presentation up while you are
yes.
speaking?
Yes,
Sorry to interrupt.
No, thank you for flagging. I didn't realize it wasn't up. We're going to pull up the slides. And there we go.
There's the Lady B. She represents a historic practice of floating logs down the Willamette River. The practice that made a major contribution to the development of economic prosperity in West Lynn. We have been at this for over 3 years, and I may have forgotten some of the conversations that we've had with the city. For the most part, those are now relatively irrelevant. Can we go to slide number 3? Okay. You can sit up here if you want. This is the other cities have owned and displayed historic tugboats that relate to their cities. This is the Captain A.L. James, built in 1939. It's a three-story boat, and obviously it's stay on that one. Okay. She's approximately 80 feet long, and obviously she can be approached and climbed on by tourists. And she's on display in the city of Boardman, Oregon. And next slide. This is the Coos number 2, which was built in Marshfield in 1934. For those of you who are not familiar with where Marshfield is, it's near Coos Bay on the Central Oregon coast. It is a 49.7 foot long, owned by the city of Coos Bay and displayed on their boardwalk. She's a wood boat, and there's been some concern about long-term maintenance, and certainly a wood boat has more potential maintenance and requires some protection from the elements. We previously proposed that the city take ownership and store the Lady B to prevent her from being scrapped. The owner of the tugboat, which is Wilsonville Concrete, which is owned by the Bernert family for several generations, has now agreed to store the Lady B until approximately April 2026. So we can select a site for a permanent display and construct the accommodations for that display. And I'd like to come back to this. This is schedules and milestones. And when I finish my comments, we'll probably come back to this. The Lady B is a 39-foot all-steel tugboat, which we propose to be displayed in the open in other words, not undercover, at Willamette Park with handicap access so people can get up close and actually touch the boat. So this is the location that we proposed. There's a restroom just to the left of that red triangle, which has handicap access from the parking lot. And we would propose to extend the sidewalk from the top of the ramp over to and around the Lady B. We have produced a budget of $200,000 that funds the process of constructing the facility at Willamette Park and providing for the primary maintenance for 20 years, which is essentially 2 paint jobs, one every 10 years. Because he's an all steel boat. She's been out in the rain for 77 years and she's pretty much weatherproof. So I met with Megan Big John, and she had concerns about who's going to design the facility to house the boat. And so we've budgeted $8,000 for the design. We budgeted $20,000 for permits, and I'm not sure which permits are required because we're not building a house or anything or a building that has electrical or plumbing. So I'm not sure what permits are required, but we have a budget item for it. And the Lady B is a 77-year-old boat. And so sometime in the last 77 years, she's been painted with lead-based paint. And so that we had a consultant examine the boat for any other kind of contamination, and that's the only thing they found. And they recommended that that any loose paint be removed and she be repainted, essentially encapsulating the lead paint with a primer. And the owners have agreed to deliver the Lady B to Willamette Park at no charge. But we do have to pay to get a crane at Willamette Park to lift the boat off. And I told you, Mary, a couple of days ago that it was $10,000. This $3,000 is for lifting the boat straight up and taking the trailer out from under it and setting the boat back down. If we have to lift the boat up and swing it over, we might have to have a more expensive crane. So that's why there's a difference between what I told you and what we have in the budget. And I got a estimate from a construction company for the permanent facility at $125,000. And to then repaint the original colors on the Lady B is $1,000. And the maintenance repainting at the 10th and 20th year is $3,000 and a contingency of $26,000. Next slide. These 7 or 8 organizations have written letters of support for saving the Lady B, including Friends of Maddox Woods, which is almost gets not noticed because they don't have a logo. So we're asking for the city's support and cooperation to save the Lady B. So I would welcome questions or discussion, and we could go back to the milestones if you want to look at the detail of the schedule.
Well, thank you for the presentation and for bringing this back before us. Any initial questions? I guess though, you had mentioned you have some funding set aside right now. It was 25,000, is that correct?
We raised 25,000 in two grants, one from the Kinsman Foundation for $15,000 and one from PGE for $10,000. And those were granted to us on the basis that the city would accept ownership and store the boat. But we think that they will store the boat with the hope of future preservation. So we think that they will agree to leave those funds in place.
And you mentioned here that the advocates would raise some funds for the permanent placement and interpretive signage. Was that from like is that the funding for the construction, like the 120, you had the budget up there, just a second. Could you go back to that budget slide? Sorry, trying to remember what. So is that kind of to help with these costs, right, that we're talking about? That you would help fundraise for that, the advocates would?
Yes. The $25,000 is included in that 200,000. So we need 200,000 to raise the 175,000.
Okay. Well, so where I'm at is I am open to the idea of a partnership. I think that, and I'm just sharing my thoughts, and we'll open the floor up to council for other questions. I am, concerned about the city having a budget impact, but it seems like we have some time to allow for fundraising to take place to see what the grants and private sector can come up with to help with this. And obviously we have other considerations about where it could specifically go. But, and I think one of the issues is if we're going to entertain this idea, we need to have, certainty that we're open to it and working towards it so that fundraising can take place. Because I can imagine it would be a difficult endeavor if we're not committal about it to go and raise $200,000. So, I'm open to the idea. Is where I'm at right now so.
Well, if you go back to the schedule, you can see that we have allotted some time for fundraising.
Thank you. And I appreciate that. And I think given that we have, in the past, there was kind of a tight deadline and I think given that there's some time for that to take place, I think it's something that could be cool. So Council President has a thought, comment.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you so much for bringing this back to us. From what I'm understanding, just to clarify for maybe people who have not heard the presentation before or aren't aware of what the difference is, the main difference I'm understanding now is that the city's not needing to find a storage space. That's the biggest difference that's helping me endorse the plan, because from what the ownership complication of storing it somewhere seemed to be potentially an issue that we couldn't get over insurance wise and liability wise. But since it can stay where it is right now, and then while we're kind of getting ourselves organized and getting some fundraising, I could see it happening. And also after visiting the tugboats on display in North Bend, the one you had a picture of, and then there's another one that's very similar sized to the Lady B. I do see that it would be a nice feature to have. And also I could imagine possibly having some support from timber companies who historically were providing the logs that, just like I believe it's Weyerhaeuser had supported some of the tugboat displays in North Bend we might be able to find some funding. I'm not worried about the fundraising aspect because we're not talking about, I mean, $200,000 or $175,000 is a significant amount of money, but relatively speaking, it's an achievable sum. So, and I'm hoping that we can also make sure that we're not overstepping and getting ahead of what, park staff would, what they would advise. So I'm still open and taking in information, but from where I'm sitting right now, I think it's worth moving forward on and working together for the Lady B.
Thank you for those comments. Good thoughts. Counselor Groner, I can't see if you have your hand up or not, but there we go. Now I can see you. Any other comments from council? And obviously Counselor Breik is interested in the topic, but is absent today and excused, so she can provide her comments later on. Counselor Bonington, you paid a visit to the Lady B. I know you're interested in the topic as well.
Yeah, I've actually been inside it. Has anyone else been inside it since then that you know of?
No
Okay.
one but you.
Okay, cool. I feel pretty special there. I do know that the Parks Board is pretty opposed to this site. I didn't get the sense they were opposed entirely to it being somewhere, but just this site in particular was not a popular option with them. I also would like to see us sort out some sort of way to make this happen, and the extended deadline makes that much easier. But I think we're going to have to talk about how that works, how that fits in. We did just make a decision on Oppenlander based on, not being able to budget in that maintenance cost. So we need to be careful about approaching this too with that same logic in mind. But I think we can sort something out with this time.
Appreciate those thoughts and comments. It seems like there is some further discussions that need to take place if the council is supportive from the standpoint of citing and how this sort of partnership could take place from even the fundraising and financials and making it more certain what the next steps are. City Manager, do you have any initial thoughts right at this time, or should we receive the presentation and take a few weeks based on council feedback to make a final decision? What would you say is a good pathway forward?
Thank you, Mayor. I think since it's a work session, we can't make a formal decision, and they're not proposing a formal decision. There's documents, there's a letter of understanding proposed that we would need to work through with our legal counsel. I think our next step, if the majority of council wants to move forward on this, would be to prepare a revised analysis of addressing Councilor Bonington's concerns, thinking a little bit about the Parks Board and a communication with them, seeing if we could come back with a recommendation to you at your upcoming business meeting, probably in April, but maybe some first thoughts right away at your meeting 2 weeks from today.
Well, how does the council feel about that? Go ahead.
I'm in agreement with that plan.
I would agree with the plan. Is there I see a thumbs up from Lou. Councilor Groner, thank you. And Councilor Bonington, okay. Well, I like that approach. So we will, any feedback from yourself, Mr. Edwards? Sorry, we're having a conversation with staff, but go ahead.
I'd just like to clarify what John said. Did you say you're going to come back to the city council in 2 weeks, or?
Well, I think in 2 weeks, maybe informal, an update. We'll talk to you, we'll talk to Megan, we'll talk to city attorney and see what we can put together. I don't think we'll be able to pull together a legal agreement for signature by council by 2 weeks from today. Although I do see the timeline on your looking for a decision today, but I think what you're getting is an initial direction that they're very interested.
Right. Well, when I put this together, I thought this was a city council meeting, not a work session, but I understand. That's fine.
The feedback from the council is positive, and we're going to work towards an agreement that we can all get behind, and then we can, you all can start fundraising, and we can, obviously city councils can provide letter of support, whatever needed to get there. But I'm excited about it. I think
Good.
it's a good step forward.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you for all the time you've put into this effort.
agreed. Thanks for having me over the other day to chat about the waterfront, our waterfront and tugboat expert. Thank you. So we will be in touch with the advocates and look forward to working on that issue, and appreciate the proposal and plans. So thank you, everybody, and you have a good rest of your afternoon. Closing out of that topic to the city manager report.
Mayor and council, pretty efficient meeting today. Thank you. You have no meeting next week because of your attendance at a conference out of town, or many of you. And so your next meeting will be March 17th, St. Patrick's Day here. Wear your green to the meeting, should you choose. On that meeting, probably the main event is that right-of-way vacation proposal. In fact, today was a timeline marker on that, and you've received an update from Mr. Wise on the communications received so far, which are several dozen. And also, we have a couple of finance policies on that meeting agenda, and we also have a next step. I believe we're going to have that on the city operations facility. So should be several things on that agenda that are of interest. Looking at the upcoming calendar, I wanted to remind the mayor, not publicly, this is not a shaming, but so we have to think about state of city at some point. And I was just thinking we haven't confirmed a date for that, so we need to work on that,
We'll do that.
before the year moves on too far.
And what's the status of Robert Moore Award applicants and things like that? In state of the city, that's the big marquee thing at the state of the city.
So
We haven't opened it yet. If you want us to, we'll start asking
Okay.
people for nominations.
We'll do that so that we can then schedule the state of the city and have that at the same time.
Perfect, thank you. Other city calendar things, I love the calendar. The Planning Commission's meeting this week. They are looking at a docket update, and the docket will be coming to council in April, most likely. This is the list of planning projects, very useful for our staff and very useful to get Planning Commission and council agreement on what that docket is. There is a Vision 43 working group meeting on Thursday. That group is looking at zoning concepts and mixed-use area boundaries and transportation connectivity, so good work happening there. There's a cleanup I saw on the calendar, Carriageway. I love that we get these open space cleanups on our city calendar, so the volunteers out there working on that. And if you have time, wander around our city parks and find Lucky in the parks by March 17th and submit your booklet downstairs, and you can get a treat from the Parks Department. So we do get a lot of families out in our parks using this. It's a pretty fun way to get out and see the park system and find Lucky. I would advise finding Lucky. If you haven't been down to the library to check out the new pods, Alyssa's not in the back anymore. Alyssa and I went down and had a 1-hour meeting in the large pod, and it's really super cool. It's very quiet. The ventilation's great. It's a really nice place to get away and work. And I think the library's intention here has been proven. That end of the library can be a little bit noisy because of the children's area downstairs in the open setting. And these pods provide a nice quiet space. So there's 4 of them, 2 little ones, 2 big ones, super cool. And acquired at very little cost and acquired by the foundation. So really, really nice thing down there. Couple of other things on my mind. We're working a lot on the city's budget, and we have some draft dates for the first meetings. This would be at the end of May for the Budget Committee and Council to be working on the budget. Lauren and her staff are working a ton on this, and I appreciate all their work. And as a reminder, we're also doing a tax increment finance agency budget as well this time around. So we'll have some conversation about that. And we're working on some public communication just to raise interest and awareness of the budget. So that's probably that's one of the things taking the most time internally right now. I did want to, before ceding my time back, just to note, I had notified you about Senate Bill 49, which is a housing bill. The legislature continues to work on housing as a top priority. I think it's fair to say that their approach includes superseding local requirements more and more. And there's two big bills. I sent out a notice about Senate Bill 49. This is one that would propose to make all jurisdictions adopt a statewide model code for zoning instead of using their own customized codes. It also prevents extra protections in historic districts, does quite a few things. So the legislature is still very focused on this housing crisis in Oregon, which we all understand. But since then, I've become more aware of House Bill 2138. 2138 does a lot of process-related things in the housing realm. It does more streamlining of process. It reduces the ability to provide notice, as I understand it, in some cases. It requires following the expedited land division process rather than allowing it. It shortens a lot of timelines. It voids many CC&Rs that are adopted before the year 2020 that have the effect of preventing housing in keeping with state goals. So these bills are very comprehensive. I was just at the beginning of your meeting, no offense, Clark, but during Clark's presentation, I was looking at a 3-page bulleted summary of the changes that House Bill 2138 would make to planning in Oregon, and it's very comprehensive. So they are working hard on it. I did send out a update on these. I heard from just less than a quorum of counselors, so I wanted to possibly take this chance to see if the city's position of not giving away local control was still your preference and policy. And if it's uncertain, or if you'd like more information about these bills, we'd be happy to schedule that. But the legislature pushing pretty hard on those. So I wanted to know if we had the approval to send testimony letters on those bills.
Happy to open the floor up to the council on that. Council President.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, thank you for sending us that information. I'm a little bit conflicted because, of course, we need more housing. So, but of course, expediting processes comes with sometimes unintended consequences, or consequences that are intended that are negatively impactful to the community. So I would support, as long as we're not taking some kind of a rogue position, like we're not going to allow any housing development, and I don't hear that. So I'm happy to also suggest that we want to retain local control, and that we do intend to do our part to increase housing production in a way that works for our community. Thank you.
I appreciate that perspective. Councilor Bonington.
Yeah, I strongly feel that these are decisions that need to be made at our level within each municipality. So even if we came to the exact same set of rules as this bill would propose, not that we necessarily would, that's a decision I think we need to be making, and that should not be a one-size-fits-all state law.
I appreciate the both comments and the council president's thoughts about a nuanced, making sure it's not just opposing the mandates, but expressing that we are doing what we can for and trying to support housing in Westland. And we have And I'm also concerned, as I'm sure you are, John, with staff resources dedicated to these issues that come down from Salem. It seems like some of our planning department, that's all the majority of work that they do. And when we have a lot of local issues that we want them to be working on, and I'm on the local official advisory committee to DLCD, and I always bring that perspective up that we're already doing so much. Look at all the work going into the housing production strategy and the housing needs analysis and everything we've done and are doing on the topic. So massive changes to code, is not a very good idea at this time, based on my read of our situation. Councilor Groner, please.
Yes, I mean, I think we all agree with the goal of increased housing being necessary. And I think the means to attain that goal really should be retained locally. As long as we're making progress toward the goal, we should not be told precisely what our means should be. So that's my view. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's helpful. And I appreciate the nuance in your comments. Our legislators are under a lot of pressure from leadership to follow the approach of these bills, and I understand them, and I think people do feel like drastic action is needed. I just know that, as you say, our staff, yourselves, going to be under a lot of pressure when the results of these bills start taking place in our community. And I do think nuanced approaches and funding solutions are probably what is needed as much of this, but we will prepare some testimony. And I did want to bring this up not as a presumption, but as a question, because of all those nuances. I know you support housing goals. I know you want to maintain good relationships with our state legislators. And we have other goals in the session, and we have to consider our approaches when we're trying to achieve goals. But we will also share some information on these bills with our community, and they can take whatever position they would like to, or may contact their own their legislators as well. So thank you for that. That's all I have today. And wish you all good luck in Washington, D.C. Represent us well, please.
Hey, thank you. I have one more thing to add. I forgot to mention this earlier when I was talking about Highway 43, but a couple of questions I wanted to get out there. It's okay if there's not answers today, but we talked, this is back on the jurisdictional transfer issue. Sorry to keep harping on that. But I was looking at I found a presentation from the R1 Act, which is the regional transportation kind of body in Clackamas County in our region for ODOT. They had the timeline on next steps for this jurisdictional transfer committee, and they will open applications in September, close applications in November of 2025, and then there'll be a recommendation and report to the legislature and OTC this year. So I was wondering, just generally, like, what would it even take to explore those conversations and the possibility of applying? And the other question was, one of the requirements for being eligible for a transfer like that is having a vision for the future use of the facility and associated land uses. And we're doing that with Vision 43. And I just wanted to make sure that work ends up with enough of the focus on the facility itself to be able to qualify. So we don't have to redo a whole nother plan for that, and for Highway 43 to even have the conversations. And I found this presentation during the meeting from February from last month from Ryan Winsheimer, who's the director. And so things are going on, and all of a sudden you get to September, you get, months pass by. And so I just wanted to flag those questions for future discussion thank you. Anything else for the good of the order, or things you would like to bring up? Council President.
Thank you. I also forgot one thing to mention, and that is that I am having a meet up with Mary at the Vintage, which is on Willamette Main Street, right next door to the church that's across the street from Willamette Ale House. So I don't have the address of the Vintage, but if anybody's interested in stopping by on Thursday at 4:00, that's where I'll be, chatting with constituents.
I've seen that place and it always looks so nice and I want to get in there. So maybe I'll stop by your meetup
All
and
right.
go in there.
Sounds good. And there, apparently she's making sourdough bread and donuts.
Is that owned by Nicole from the city?
Yes,
That's
and actually
awesome.
one of our employees owns and runs the
That's what I
Vintage,
thought.
Nicole Budden, who's wonderful.
Those donuts are incredible. The sourdough ones and
Cool. Well, thank you for sharing that.
You're
Great
welcome.
engagement. I've been meaning to work on getting a time for myself to do kind of constituent meetings. So, on a regular basis. So good.
Yes, Kevin's got his own car club started, so you better catch up.
it's true. And they're actually a sponsor, not monetarily, but yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for the great meeting. Counselor Groner, feel better, and thanks for joining us virtually. And we will reconvene on the 17th as our next regularly scheduled meeting unless something comes up at the interim. We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, staff.